Hello and welcome to People, Politics and Power. I am Imoni Amarere. So much is happening at the moment that will shape the future of Nigeria's democracy, its electoral system and politics in general. While the focus has been on the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, not many have paid attention to the fact that the Senate has passed the Electoral Offences Commission Bill. If signed into law by President Muhammadu Buhari, this bill will provide that the commission will be set up to investigate electoral offences, prosecute electoral offenders, and maintain records of all persons investigated and prosecuted. This proposed piece of legislation sets out what amounts to electoral offences and prescribes punishments for such offences. For instance, a 20-year jail term awaits persons found guilty of snatching ballot boxes, burning during elections, and also after elections. It also prescribes that any candidate or agent who damages or snatches election materials before, during, and after an election without the permission of the election official in charge of the polling station will be jailed for a maximum of 20 years and fined 40 million naira. The bill prescribes at least 5 years imprisonment or a fine of at least 10 million naira or both for any officer or executive of any association or political party that engages in electoral fraud and contravenes the provisions of clauses 221, 225 subsection 1, 3 and 4, and 227 of the 1999 Constitution as amended. The chairman of the Senate Committee on INEC and Electoral Matters, Kabiru Gaya, says the bill became imperative in view of INEC's inability to prosecute electoral offenders in accordance with the provisions of Section 149 and 150 subsection 2 of the Electoral Act as amended. While the effort to sanitize the electoral process and unbundle INEC through the Electoral Offences Commission Bill has been on the cards for several years, quite a number of questions, however, arise. Chief among which is the setting up of a yet another bureaucracy with all the attendant issues at a time of economic downturn in the country and across the world. The tracking of electoral offences during, before, during, and after elections, a diligent prosecution of offenders where INEC and the police have failed in the past. The need for intelligence gathering and information sharing between and amongst relevant agencies. The rivalry that has plagued many government agencies militating against the effectiveness and the evolving nature of electoral offences, amongst others. This is our focus on the program today as we take a look at the Electoral Offences Commission Bill. And, of course, I will be joined on the program by two gentlemen, and together we will try to claw through that bill, if possible, session by session, and in some cases, go into details in the clauses. Stay with us, and we will be on our way in discussing this all-important bill in a short while. All right, welcome back. Time now to meet our panelists. I'm joined here in the studio by Dr. Hussein Abdul, a political scientist, a public intellectual, a development and humanitarian specialist, and country director, CARE. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Hussein.
Thanks for having me.
And joining us virtually on Zoom is Kola Idowu. Kola is director of Kimpact Development Initiative. Kola, thank you so much for finding time to join us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome. Right, so Kola, let me begin with you. What is your first impression of this Electoral Offences Commission bill?
Thank you so much. I think this Electoral Offence Commission bill is a bill that be long overdue, if you ask me, in our electoral process, because this bill over the years has been what civil society, most of the election workers have been clamoring for, because this bill seeks to punish electoral offender. However, maybe during as time goes on in the program, we can still talk about some of the reservations we have. But if you look at what has been happening over the years in terms of peculiarity of Nigeria election, when I say the peculiarity of Nigeria election, election in Nigeria has been taken so serious to the extent that every organ of the society shuts down on the election day. And that tells you how serious election is in Nigeria. And why are most of these institutions shutting down on the election day is because of the election security now and the election integrity. So when you have such important day every 4 years in the life of a nation, and every year, depending on where INEC will have their by-election, you'll find out that it is imperative to make sure that the process goes on free and fair. And where we now begin to have infractions, now we need a system that will be able to punish such infractions in our electoral process. And that is why people have been clamoring, and over the years, we will notice that Nigerian election has been fraught with where we have cases of ballot box snatching, we have cases of election rigging, we have cases of electoral violence, we have cases of bribery in election, and we also have cases of negligence, and we also have issues around election petition tribunal. So when you look at all this, you find out that, look, there is a need for that system to be cleaned up, to be sanitized, and that most of the infractions are being dealt with. However, INEC has come out to anytime you speak about to INEC and say, look, the offenders, what happened to them? INEC has come out to say, look, they have a lot on their hand, and that they are also in support of starting an electoral offense commission who will be able to take the burden off their neck and begin to prosecute election offenders. Let me give you these statistics. After 2019 general election, over 1,446 electoral offenders were arrested. Now, and that cut across the one EFCC arrested for vote buying, ICPC, the police, the Nigerian army. You will recall the Nigerian army also gave a press conference, and then because they arrested some electoral offenders, most especially in the area of violence, electoral violence, ballot box snatching. We saw that in Rivers State and
well, we appear to be having some challenges with the communication from Idowu. We hope we sort it out very quickly, and we'll return to you, Mr. Idowu. But back here in the studio, Dr. Hussein, for a very long time, for several years, since Nigeria's return to democratic rule in 1999, there has been this clamor for the unbundling of INEC. And there has also been this clamor for electoral offenders to be prosecuted. And there's also there has also been the complaint that the INEC, as it is today, does not have the resources, the manpower, and the expertise to go after electoral offenders on election day and thereafter prosecute them. Of course, that was what led to the setting up of one of the things that led to the setting up of the Justice Mohammed Uwais committee or a panel that looked at how to fine-tune, to reform the Nigerian electoral system. And one of the recommendations of that committee was the setting up of an electoral offences commission. Are we there?
Yeah, I think we are probably there. My first impression, hearing about this bill and going through the details of the bill, is to say yes. I think we are taking a very good step. The challenges will actually be when we begin to look at the details of what we have in the bill. But I think the bill is a recognition of the enormity of the challenges that we face in terms of electoral offenses and the INEC's obvious lack of capacity to deal with those challenges. And INEC had never hidden that, whether it was under Jega's leadership or even under this current leadership. Every round of elections, they are overwhelmed by the number of electoral offenses that are recorded across the country. They don't have, to that extent, the prosecutorial power, and also don't have the resources to mobilize the right number of lawyers to support them in that prosecution effort. So that's quite deep. And I think, like you mentioned, the OS panel, I think the conversation generally has been that INEC, as currently constituted, is quite unworthy, and therefore its capacity to provide that efficient running of our electoral system is deeply challenged. And there are two dimensions of that unworthiness. One is its capacity to deal with electoral offenses, and the other one has to do with the delimitation of constituencies and how can that be done. And luckily this time around, INEC was able to do that with limited controversies around it. But there are arguments out there whether we cannot have a different body to be responsible for delimiting constituencies, and INEC just be allowed to run elections, and all subsidiary activities and engagement are handled by other bodies. So having a commission to deal with electoral offenses is therefore a welcome idea. But the extent to which probably we have engaged this bill before its passage, the details, the other nitty-gritties around it, and whether there are no contradictions with other institutions, or whether some of the offenses listed are also not controversial in the context of people's rights and freedom of expressions, and all that is what probably we may need to be looking at. And whether these electoral offenses, where we're not reducing ourselves to pulling offenses and opening up the commission to other offenses that actually may be electoral in character, but have a lot to do with other dimensions of our criminal justice system. So I think that's probably what we may need to be looking at. But my first impression is to say that we have something we've been clamoring for, but again, the details may not reflect some of our realities.
Bukola, let me just throw an issue up here from his intervention. Do you think that there was enough engagement with the public and with critical stakeholders before the passage of this bill by the Senate?
I think in the how will I put it now, in the whole process of what the House need to do, they did what exactly they should do. Now, but I understand what my colleague in the studio is actually saying. I think the public and the civil society did not engage effectively and more. But the House cannot do more than what they did according to their law, because they conducted public hearing, which, I mean, they will say that is what the Constitution asks them to do. They did public hearing, and that is all. But in most cases, the way we engage the Electoral Act amendment, I think Nigerian, the public and the civil society has not been able to engage the Electoral Offense Commission bill like that. Now, I give you an example. In the bill, now the definition of violence in that bill talked more of an election day than pre and post election. And that is worrying. And that is a signal we supposed to have raised long time ago. And that when we have started having some insertion, we will have raised it the way we raised that of the Electoral Act. And that is why I agree with my colleague in the studio that the engagement has not been that robust as it should have been. And that is why I also agree that we have a document. That is a good way to start. But the document may not be a perfect reflection of what exactly we Nigerians are yearning for.
Okay, Dr. Hussein, how, because this bill says the National Electoral Offences Commission will be an independent body. It states so from the very beginning in Part 1, Section 1, Subsection 2F of that bill. It says that it shall be independent in the performance of its functions, subject to the provisions of Clause 174 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999 as amended, on the power of the Attorney General of the Federation to institute, continue, take over, or discontinue criminal proceedings against any person in any court of law. With this exception made, can this commission really be considered to be as independent as it ought to be?
Yeah, I don't think that independence of a commission is absolute. And the independence of any commission is to the extent of the power provided it by the Constitution. There are constitutional commissions in country, but this particular commission is not, by virtue of the way it is established, not through the constitutional amendment process, it is not a constitutional commission. Because like now, yes, the power of the commission is derived from the Constitution as stated here, but it's not like INEC that has been created and instituted by the Constitution. And therefore, if we have a constitutional power of the Attorney General to determine what prosecution should continue or not, I don't think any act should be seen instituted to abridge that particular power of the Attorney General, unless if we are able to amend the Constitution. I think the independence of this commission will be largely determined by its composition, its resources, and how it carries out its activities. Because it is one thing to even announce a commission to be independent, but the way it operates and carries out its activities undermines that independence, as it were. So for me, I wouldn't predicate the lack of independence of this commission on the basis of a constitutional power of the Attorney General, but I would rather look at it on how it is constituted and how it is resourced. That would be the major determinant of whether it is independent or not. I think that's quite key. But we need to be very clear that this particular commission is being established through the act of the National Assembly. And this is probably very different from commissions that have been clearly stated and provided for within in the Constitution. And an independent National Electoral Commission is one important one, at least that we can state in this regard.
Flowing from that,
Yeah.
again, the membership of this commission will go into it very shortly.
Yeah.
But the chairman of that commission is going to be appointed by the president, nominated by president for confirmation by the National Assembly. Again, that raises another question of its independence. Of course, this has been an issue with such other commissions, and especially so the Independent National Electoral Commission. Should there have been a departure from what obtains at the moment if this commission were going to be as independent as we want it to be?
Yeah, there should have been a departure, but what we have is clearly in conformity with the Constitution. I think what we need to have is that courage to get to some of those provisions in the Constitutions and amend them. But as it is consistent with the Constitution that the President do the nomination and the National Assembly do the confirmation. And many times when we engage into this conversation, it's also to look at the nature of our kind of government. It is a presidential system of government, and then there are clear checks and balances. I think what is important is about the procedure that the president instituted in making his nomination. For me, that's the most important thing. How is the nomination coming? In some places, look, this is actually thrown out to the public. It is done through public advert. People actually apply. Screening is done at the executive level, and then they send that nomination to the parliament, and then the parliament go through that confirmation. But as it is that, look, is the president could just determine to decide to appoint anybody and goes through a parliamentary procedure. But I think what we need to deepen is the process that the president actually used to make his nomination. That's the most important. How transparent is it? How open is it? How contesting it is? How much people are involved? What screening does the executive goes through? Sometimes when the president's side does the right screening and get the right person out there, it reduces the controversies that some of these things go through when the nomination gets to the National Assembly. But for me, I will always go with the process that we strengthen the separation of power between the executive and the legislature. And within our own kind of system, the process has always been that the president do the nomination and the assembly confirms. But like you have in the OAS report, the recommendations around the procedure, it didn't take outrightly the nomination of the president, but there's a procedure that will determine who is presented to the National Assembly for the confirmation. And I think that this is what we don't have at the moment. And so what we have is not contained in this bill, and the bill ab initio was drawn on the basis of the nomination that already exists in the system, as it were.
Bukola, this is an issue that many people will harp on, because the independence of the body to a large extent depend on how the members of the commission are nominated. And by the provisions of this bill at the moment, every member, the chairman, the secretary, and every other member of the commission, except for the ex-official members, are to be nominated by the president for Senate confirmation. Are you cool with that kind of situation?
Thank you so much for that. I think at the initial stage, myself and my organization and few other people were part of the people that canvassed against this commission. And I tell you why. And the reason then was that Nigeria don't need electoral offense commission. We need an electoral court. Now, the judiciary, the court, is still seen to be an independent body today. You know, it's still seen, still have that perception. they still have the NJC, they still have people who are not carrying member of any political party. And we said again that why not let's have electoral court, at least you have industrial court. But this electoral court can undo pre-election matters that have to do with issues around party primaries and the rest that lingers until even after election day matter, electoral offense, and even election petition tribunals. So instead of cases in the court to pause for 6 months because there is election petition tribunal, and then you deploy the judges, and then the judges come back after 6 months to attend to that case. So we saw this. But I said that, like I said, the advocacy continues. But this is what we have. And one of the reasons why I said, look, this is not a perfect system. And I give you an example. In Nigeria today, the Attorney General of the Federation and the Minister of Justice is a card-carrying member of a political party. It belongs to a political party. The president belongs to a political party. And then the president is going to make the nomination belongs to a political party. Not even the National Council now is going to make that, but maybe the president. The president is going to make that, or maybe unlike the INEC, which the president makes the nomination, still subjected to the National Council before it goes to the House. But this case, the president will make the nomination of the chairman and the commissioners or the board, whichever they are going to use. Now, again, the people that we screen and that we also ratify in terms of affirm the appointment are in the House, the senators, and they also belong to a political party. So this is the case we have, and we are asking a body to be independent, where from the appointment to the operations are going to be, and that the approval from the appointment to the operation are going to be gotten from the people who are partisan. So how independent is that going to be? Look at it this way. Like I said, where you read the other time, now the Attorney General still have a lot of responsibility based on this act. Of course, that is what the Constitution said. Now again, are they going to be truly independent in their budgetary allocation? Is it going to be on the first line chart, unlike what we have been having now? Is that going to hamper their operations, the appointment and the operations? What about the enforcement of the cases, of the judgment they will get at the court? So these are the issues we have here. But as it is, we are starting, and it may not be perfect, but we keep engaging. Maybe we keep having amendment upon amendment, and then until we get it right. But what we have now is just a good start. But I think it is still not a perfect document.
Okay. Now, Dr. Hussein, unlike the Independent National Electoral Commission, membership of this commission is going to be part-time, apart from the chairman and the secretary of the commission. And if you look at the provisions of this bill, almost every member, except for the ex-official members, all the members are people drawn from what I would describe as statutory members. They are drawn from already existing state institutions. For instance, apart from the chairman and the secretary, there will be representatives of the following federal ministries: Justice, Internal Affairs, Defense, Information, the Inspector General of Police or his representative, the Chairman, Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, or his representative, the Commandant General, Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps, the Director General, Nigeria Financial Intelligence Unit, or his representative, the Director General, Legal Aid Council of Nigeria, and then, of course, the 6 ex-official members who will be Nigerians with cognate experience in any of the following, that is, law, security, electoral management, engineering, information technology, and one each representing geopolitical zone of the country, and at least 2 of whom should be women. Now, what does that tell you about what this commission will look like?
For me, that's a significant part of the independence of the commission that we should actually be discussing. I don't really think that you can have such a structure with representations of agencies that have been listed there and expect, one, commitment to the work because they already have their primary assignment and they are already leaders in those primary institutions where they are in. They are not talking about representation. They are already defining who should be in that commission. It's not that these agencies will appoint people into the commission. It's Director General this, Director General that. And that, for me, takes away the whole entirety of the independence of the commission. The idea about independence is not simply independence of the influences of individuals and politicians. It is also the independence from the influences of other institutions as well. And for me, that's problematic. One, the time, because it is part-time, the time that people will actually give to this work, one, will be a challenge. Yes, I know there will be a secretariat and there will be staff of the commission and all that. Number two, for me, in terms of the challenge with this kind of structure, is the fact that because these people are engaged, like I mentioned, they wouldn't have time. And I also think that part of the difficulties that we are going to have is it operating properly as a commission. It would have been a different thing if they had called it an agency rather than actual, because the commission has certain legal expectations. I can understand why they wanted to make it part-time, because Nigerians have been complaining about multiplications of institutions and the increasing bureaucracy and the cost of governance. So there are a lot of complaints we are all making about the cost of governance, and they must have considered that. But you can still have it on the part-time basis and still get people who are independent, who are available to do this. And for me, I'm also very shocked that there is not even civil society representation in a commission of this nature, particularly that you actually want to make it a part-time commission. And this actually tells you politicians' perception of the role of civil society in the governance processes, because that civil society engagement and its capacity to hold the leaders to account is actually not properly respected. The media is also not represented in anywhere. And the media, even unlike civil society, even has its own, there are media institutions. And media actually has a clear provision in the constitutions in terms of its responsibility to hold our systems to account. And that institution is not several institutions of the media actually that you can find of. You may not find that kind of structure within the civil society setting, but you still don't also have the media represented here. So for me, it is more like an ad hoc government structure that is being created rather than actually creating a commission as we will expect it. Because the character of a commission is determined by the composition of the membership of that commission. They could still have the commission on part-time basis by still getting people who are not already engaged in this kind of institutional responsibilities.
Bukola, how do you respond to the structure that I've just read out that is contained in this bill? Bukola, can you hear us?
I think I can hear you.
Go ahead. Yes.
Okay. I think, I just don't. I think what we are having is that you have been complaining about cost of governance, and then we want to do it right. So let's have a part-time commission, member of the commission working. But I think if any commission is going to have a part-time work, it is not this type of commission that should have it. And because it's for me, is going to begin to, it's more like they are being handicapped before they even start. Like Dr. Ozen said, look, do you even know today, INEC conducts election all year round. There is no rest within the space of 4 years. By-elections, election keep going on, off-cycle election. In the next 3 months, we will be in Anambra. And then between now and 3 months, there are still off-cycle elections. Now, after Anambra, we are going to have Ekiti, an Osun election before 2019. Now, there are going to be issues that this commission will deal with within this space of time and other by-election in some states. Don't also forget, as it happened in the past, there are times some of the occupant of these lawmaking offices dies, and then INEC is obliged to conduct by-election in such instances. So we have issues that will be coming up from some of these. I don't think this commission will be able to function effectively on a part-time basis. And it also depends, again, on the internal policy they are going to come up with. Because when it comes to forming a quorum to sit, to make decisions, to prosecute, to do a lot of this, I understand this is going to be a bill. But what, again, we should be interested in now, and that I think civil society, the media should be their light on, is that we need to begin to see the internal policy, the policy of the commission at which they will be working with. That is also very, very important, and that can provide a succor in some of the areas where we have gaps, and then we need to begin to see that. But if that is also going to be faulty, then this is likely going to be dead on arrival. There is no organization and there is no sector or institution in this country today that have been able to follow electoral process to making sure that the process become free, fair, credible. You know, unlike the civil society and the media. You know, they have every point in time be beaming the light and shining the light on the electoral process. So what it becomes disappointing when they are not represented there. Their report, don't forget, they monitor the elections. Now, even at the Election Petition Tribunal, INEC, all of them also rely on the observers' report to do some work. So why are they being excluded from some of this? The media that report that can also attest to some of these are being excluded. I also feel that in no time there needs to be an amendment so that some of these we can have an inclusion in this, a total inclusivity in the composition of the
If we are talking of amendments, Dr. Hussein, to a proposed law that has not been fully made, why don't we make those changes and alterations ab initio from the word go, rather than wait to make amendments as we move along?
Yeah.
If we have seen these gaps, which speaks to the issue of whether or not the lawmakers had enough engagement on this bill before passing it in the Senate as they did a few days ago.
Yeah, I think for me, probably I may not be the only one, but I think the bill also come to me by surprise. One, I didn't engage it, and I don't think many civil society organizations actually engaged this. I think people were more carried away, like he mentioned, by the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. And all the energy was on the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. And so proper attention was not given to this particular one. And normally what you do in this kind of situation, I'm not saying they didn't do that, but I want to believe it wasn't done, is you need to know who are the stakeholders of this bill and then invite those stakeholders to public hearing. Sometimes you need to be deliberate about it. Even if you talk to INEC, and you can also ask INEC to invite some of the civil society organizations that work with INEC, and then we come to that, and they have access to the bill, and we're able to engage it effectively. I'm not. I don't think that this was done. So my sense is that, with due respect to our senators and the kind of work that have gone into this, is for them to actually reflect on it. I'm not sure they've done any concurrence with the House of Reps
Not yet.
at the moment.
Yes.
So I think the deal has not been done yet. I think there is still room for that. I think it's beholden us and the civil society and other stakeholders to actually engage the House of Reps and make sure that the House of Reps version significantly takes care of some of these gaps. And then by the time they are having the concurrence, they are able to agree on things that is probably a bit acceptable. In principle, it's a good idea. In principle, it is high time we have that in the country. But again, the details they are as important as actually the document or the law itself. And so, because the law is basically is about the details inside. If the details are problematic, even though the principle of the law is fine, there is still problem. And so for me, we shouldn't be talking about amendments to these after presidential assent. I think we should be talking about them making some good changes to this so that when it gets to the president, we can have a relatively good document or law in the first place. And then we have a more efficient commission. I think it is a very important point about whether this commission should be part-time or full-time. For me, in the spirit of a commission, is largely supposed to be part-time. But increasingly, we are seeing that happening, that we are getting more full-time commissions, even board members that are appointed into institutions these days in Nigeria, they begin to demand for offices. And I can give you several examples where people who have been appointed into board are demanding to have offices. And then the chair of the board is contesting for space with the chief executive of that institution. And I think...
And the boards are supposed to be part-time.
And the boards are supposed to be part-time boards. And these boards they demand, and where this part-time engagement is not working well for them, they demand for meetings, and meetings are taking place almost on weekly basis, and they're permanently in hotels in Abuja. And ask any chief executive of a federal agency that has a board. You will hear this kind of stories. So I will still go for the part-time, but I would prefer that we have a part-time of people who are really independent and that they are not already involved, they are not already employed and doing government-related assignment. We can get people who have retired from those agencies. So if you want, you can get a retired judge, you can actually get somebody who a retired police, and you can actually say it must not be below the rank of a commissioner of police. So you can do all those things, and then you can specify age even if you like. You can do all that. But I don't really think that we should say that they should be represented from this direct representation of people who are already actively involved in those agencies.
Okay, let's go on a short break. When we return, we'll be looking at other aspects of this bill, with particular focus on the offenses and the prescribed punishments that have been stated in this bill. We'll also be looking at an aspect that many who have seen this bill described as an attempt to bring back the hate speech bill through the back door. Stay with us. Thank you so much for staying with us. People, politics, and power. And we are X-raying the National Electoral Offences Commission and for Related Matters Bill 2021. That bill has been passed in the Nigerian Senate, waiting the version from the House of Representatives, then concurrence before it is sent to the president for his assent. Now, Bukola, let's look at another aspect of this bill. Before we look at the offenses and the penalties that are stipulated here, there is what is in section 23 of the bill. It is actually titled Prohibition of Damaging of Character. And many people seem to think, many of those who have seen it seem to think that this is an attempt to bring back the hate speech bill, which was killed in the assembly some time ago, to bring it back through this bill, as it were, through the back door. Because he says no person acting for himself or on behalf of any organization or political party or candidate or his agent or other person shall, with an intention of prejudicing the result of any election, damage or defame in any manner the character of any candidate in an election or his family member by making, saying, printing, publishing, distributing, posting, airing, televising, or post or cause to be made, said, printed, published, distributed, posted up, aired or televised before or during any election, any matter in the print or electronic media, including radio, television, the internet, online or social media, which he knows or believes to be false in relation to the personal character or conduct of the candidate or his family member, or by making false accusations on any matter in a manner likely to make others believe such matter to be true.
Thank you so much. Please just permit me to quickly chip in this. I think what I was saying the other time was not that I wanted this commission to be full-time basis, but based on the principle of what they came up with now. So for instance now, if you are going to have somebody from the Ministry of Defense, if everything is about saving costs, then let the person be in the offense commission, and the Ministry of Defense is still paying salary without even getting double money. That is why I say you can be there full-time and then the ministry is paying your salary, but not as an allowance for another thing, and then you are not dedicated because you are committed here. That is exactly what I mean. So I still agree with the part-time, but it has to be not from the ministry and those parastatals. Well, having said that, most people are so much, I think the fear has been brought back, because we need to really, really, really understand what a speech is, and then where do we strike the balance. And this, to me, is majority are concerned in that, look, this is like we are smuggling in the initial A speech that was killed into this. But having said that, some of the argument again is that when you look into that bill, it's talking about speeches that are false, or you are trying to make people to believe erroneously that are true, that are made true, and assassinating character. And so this particular aspect, if you ask me, is needed, but it has to be more explanatory. Now, as somebody over the years, and as an organization over the years, monitor electoral violence through the platform of the election violence report. We have monitored this over the years. I can tell you most of the potential and trigger of violence in election has always, like about 35% of them are being, one of the trigger is this issue of hate speech, inciting statements, where you incite people against the opposition, where you do hate speech, and then against a tribe, even against a particular candidate. So this is a menace in our electoral process. However, when it is not explicitly stated on what constitutes hate speech, what constitutes defamation of character, but this broad definition may not address it. And that is why I so much agree that now the civil society, the media, every one of us need to engage the lower house now so that they can fill in the gap, correct this, and after that, also be interested in the two houses, in the harmonization process of the two houses. Whenever they are having their retreat, to harmonize it. Now, the same way we monitor the electoral acts, that we also knew when there are some questionable insertions. So we should also be interested in the version of the house now, and then when it comes to harmonization. Now, it shouldn't even stop there. We should also be engaging the executive. Don't forget, during the 8th assembly, the Saraki-led assembly sent the electoral act amendment to President Buhari, like about 2 times. The president returning to amend some things there. So at some point too, whatever the oversight that has not been done or that have not been accommodated in this bill, don't forget, the president don't just sign every bill sent to him hook, line, and sinker. So what it means is that we can also still engage the presidency to have another look into some of this omission. So my point here is this: this is still vague. It can be used towards our political enemy, towards political enemy and that. But I think there is a need for us to engage the lower, and don't stop it there. Engage the harmonization process from the two houses, and don't stop there. Engage the presidency until we have a clean copy of the Electoral Offense Commission.
Okay, Dr. Hussein, this particular session 23 is one issue that I'm sure will provoke a lot of discussion, because apart from what I read out, the prescription here for as punishment is a term of 10 years imprisonment, 10 years, or at least 10 million naira, or both.
Yeah, of course, I know that, because what they wanted with the hate speech bill was much more broader. They narrowed this to election-related conception of hate speech. But my worry about this generally is I found it superfluous. I find it unnecessary in a bill of this nature. Look, ordinarily for me, like I mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, I will reduce this commission to pulling offenses. When you open it up for others, you expose the commission, and in a manner that could actually also undermine the so-called independence of that commission. Ballot box snatching, outright rigging of election, electoral violence, and all those pulling offenses, key. But offenses that actually have to do with the day-to-day electoral engagement, I think should still be left through our normal processes, campaign-related issues, because a lot of things that you want to do, there are already systems for it. For like corruption, bribery. You know, it's also there.
Yeah, it's also
It's also there in the bill. And why do you actually have to do that? You have two commissions already dealing, two agencies, ICPC, EFCC, dealing with that. Why do you want to have another commission dealing with this particular, this kind of offenses? So for me, I think electoral offenses should be largely pulling offenses. Offenses that actually have to do with the conduct, real conduct of the elections, and avoid other issues that that could undermine even the entire commission. So why do you have to bring hate speech into the job of a commission of this nature, when even as a country you have not even established some of those parameters or on the proper understanding of it, and we're already involved in the whole contentions around it. So for me, I will avoid that. If you want to have a hate speech law, have it and let's debate it. Put that bill out just like we did in the last time. But I think don't model it up into something as laudable as electoral offences commission that we're trying to put up.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Hussein. Well, this bill is one that we cannot exhaust in one single program of this nature, because there's also the section 25 of this bill that talks about prohibition of campaign against national interest. And that has to deal with a lot of issues bordering on criminality and all of that. But we will return sometime next week to take a second look. We'll look at other provisions of this bill. Hopefully, that will be before the two houses of the National Assembly will come to do some harmonization, and before the bill is sent to the President for his assent. But for now, we must thank our guests who have been with us here today. Dr. Hussein Abdul, who is a political scientist, a public interest intellectual, a development and humanitarian specialist, and country director, CARE. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for
having me. And Kola Idowu. Kola is a director of Kimpact Development Initiative. Thank you so much, Mr. Idowu, for joining us.
Thank
All
you
right,
so
and
much
for you, our viewers out there, we want to thank you for investing your time with us. Please join us again when we bring you a fresh edition of People, Politics, and Power. Bye for now.